Hey, how's it going, friends? I had planned on making like a full reaction video to the direct for the Nintendo Switch 2 today. My eyes are kind of straining from the fact that I woke up at like 5:30 this morning to set up my computer, my camera, my ring light, microphone, all for the purpose of just watching the stream, hours straight and just record my reaction. And that's what I did. Like I had planned on just editing that down and then posting it to you guys. But then in the process of editing down that footage and, looking back at the reaction that I had given to the direct, I thought, okay, there are some things that are kind of rubbing me off the wrong way here. The biggest thing being that, within the presentation itself, Nintendo didn't give any information in there about the pricing of the console as well as the pricing of games. If you've heard any of the news regarding the Switch 2 in the wake of the Direct and everything that came after that, you probably know where this is going. But after giving some thought about the Direct as a whole and the information that we've gotten about the pricing thereof, I have very mixed feelings. My feelings are of such that I think Nintendo is about to make a big mistake with some of the things that they are going to be doing, or maybe they're going to make a choice that's going to bring them down a path of success, but one that's going to be bad for the consumer. I'll explain. So the Nintendo Switch 2 itself, that is going to be priced at $450 American, or just straight up $500 if you buy it in a bundle preloaded with Mario Kart World. You might have noticed that that is a pretty hefty difference in price from the original base model Switch of $300 and then jumping up to $450. On one hand, like, I can kind of get it. The Switch 2 is boasting some pretty impressive specs for it being a handheld system. I mean, the fact that it has the ability to run games at 120 frames per second undocked in handheld mode is really impressive. And the fact that it also is able to upscale to 4K resolution when docked is also going to be really cool. And the fact that it just has, better performance, and it's Nintendo actually recognizing that people just want good performing hardware at the end of the day, not some kind of out of the box innovation for the console. I think that's going to make a big difference, for anyone who is very fixated on hardware and just wanting a better running system. But I think people, first and foremost, were hoping for something just a little bit better in terms of price. I know I was. I mean, when you think about it, about some of its contemporaries that have been around for a little while, you think about the Xbox Series consoles. The Xbox Series X, that launched at $500 when it first debuted almost 5 years ago at this point, November 2020. The same goes for the PS5. It launched at $500. And then you had the more of the consumer grade model. Maybe that's not the right word for it, but the alternative options. The PS5 digital was released for $400, which was basically just the same thing but without a disk drive. And then you also had the Xbox Series S, which, like the PS5 digital, was just the series console but without the disk drive, but also had slightly worse specs, for being able to run at higher frame rates and resolutions. But I think the thing that came with the benefit of those systems is the Xbox Series S especially is, you can get Game Pass, and if you have the Series S, you can get access to a whole ton of games right off the bat to where you don't have to buy a whole lot, to have a decent library up front. You can just pay the 15 or 20 bucks a month, whatever it is. I don't have Game Pass. But if you signed up for that, you could at least get things like Halo the Master Chief Collection. You could get Minecraft. You could get a whole host of like Bethesda and Blizzard games. And that would make a huge difference for those who are either, hardcore gamers and want a cheaper option, or maybe you're someone who is getting like an entry level console for their kids and just want a way for them to be able to get a lot of value for the console that you got while also saving money in the long run. And it's sort of similar with like PlayStation too. Like, they have their service with PS Plus Extra and Premium, where you essentially have the same thing, like a lot of games that you can just download for no additional charge and go play right then and there, along with the free monthly games that you get with PS Plus. And so when you compare that to what Nintendo was offering with the Switch 2, I don't know if that value is quite there. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some really cool games that are coming out on the horizon, like Mario Kart World, which I saw the gameplay. It looks great. I also think that Donkey Kong Bonanza looks really fun. Like basically Mario Odyssey, but you get to wreck everything. Like, I would love to play those games. But now that leads into the next and possibly even worse issue at hand here, which is the price of the games themselves. Initially, the reporting was digital games were going to be valued of at most $80, and then physical was going to be $90 retail for, the US. And of course, those figures will differ for like a European Union, the United Kingdom, Japan, so on and so forth. But just in America, that's like, for a base model video game, that's probably the most that I've personally ever seen a game being released, aside from maybe like the Guitar Hero games, but that like at least bundled up with like a peripheral, and so that made sense. But yeah, the initial reporting was that Mario Kart World was going to ship for $90 retail, and since then, some of the news articles have been a bit more clarified to say that it's going to be $80 retail. But needless to say, that is crazy. We had gotten used to first party AAA, if you will, titles on the Nintendo Switch being released for $60, which, it's not great either. Like, it's still like a hefty price tag to fork over, but at least we had gotten used to that price point for quite a while. That had been the price point for games of that caliber since the Xbox 360 and PS3 days. And so it didn't really feel that crazy to pay an amount. But then, of course, when Tears of the Kingdom released, that was released for $70. But again, that kind of made sense. It was a huge title. And also, again, like the PS5 and Xbox Series X titles were coming at $70. So still not great what we were used to it. But now we have to contend with these games being priced at $80 now. It's like, look, inflation is what it is. Like, we've been used to it for a while, but I think the bigger issue here is that the Xbox and the PlayStation, while they have a lot of games that are certainly applicable to a younger audience, the core demographic for those consoles are, I would say, like teenagers, people like me, who are adults, people who are going to be buying a lot of games that are tailor made for more of a mature audience, I guess you could say. And so we have the disposable income to be able to shell out some money for some of those games every now and then. But with the Switch, despite there being a huge market of, again, teens and adults who will play those games, the Switch is primarily like a family console. Is Nintendo really expecting that people nowadays who say like have 3 kids at home, both parents are working nonstop to make ends meet? Are they really going to be spending $80 per game just to make their kids happy? Like, look, right now, you can go out to like Wendy's and get a biggie bag for less than a carton of eggs. People are living paycheck to paycheck. They are doing whatever means necessary in order to pay off their bills. And even then, like, people still aren't able to make ends meet. They have to surrender themselves to a grind that is going to be bringing them down into the worst mental and emotional states possible. And for some of those people, video games are a great way for them to escape from reality for a little while. The reality that we're going to be facing in the future is that what was already a luxury good is going to be even more so, where, the less, financially well off people in America or wherever else can't afford these games. I mean, that's just bad for business. I mean, Nintendo, they're not going to sell as many games, I don't think, if they keep this up. Of course, people who love these games but just simply can't afford them are going to go elsewhere. And so I genuinely think that if Nintendo goes down this road to where if they make games that are going to be $80 or maybe even more so, who knows, that's going to set a bad precedent to where all of these companies are going to be trying to chase after greater profit per sale. But at what ultimate cost? Are they going to try to chase after getting more short-term revenue per sale, but losing the long-term customers who will keep coming back and engender, long-term loyalty to a brand? I don't know. I'll say for me, as someone who has a very young daughter, but also, my wife loves video games, I would hate for us to not have the chance to experience new things as it goes along, but I have to make financial decisions. Would I love to buy like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, as well as Doom the Dark Ages in the next month? I would love to, but both of us had to replace our tires recently on our vehicles, and so I have to put those things on the back burner for a while. But at least I will know that, like, at some point those games will go on sale, perhaps, maybe a few months down the road, so I could pick them up then, when my bills are cleared. But with Nintendo, those games never go on sale. And if they do, it's probably like 20 or 30% at most. It's never a steep discount like you'd find on the PlayStation Store or Steam or something like that. So, in short, I think today Nintendo showed its true colors in demonstrating what it really cares about when it comes to selling these games. They say that they care about making games that people will cherish and love, and they have. They have made video games that are applicable there, but I think they're being a little too cocky here. They need to back off with these prices. If they can at least make it 70, like people won't like it, but they'll at least accept it. But as much as people have been fearful of something like GTA 6 coming out and costing $100 at release, if Nintendo can get away with this, that probably will be a reality. And then what? So I don't know, man. Like, the Switch 2 looks cool. Some of those games were really intriguing. I loved seeing the acknowledgement that Hollow Knight Silk Song will maybe get released this year. But at the end of the day, it's a luxury good. It's something that we don't need. If it's really going to cost this much money to invest in the next generation of Nintendo when it really is just like a sort of slightly better version than what we already had before, which was already great, I don't know. I just don't know. But as for my thoughts on that, I mean, that's it. Thank you at least for letting me rant here for a little bit and share some of these thoughts I've had after the direct. If you liked what I had to say, please consider liking the video and subscribing. For doing so really does help me out, and I will see you all in the next one.